Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good. Welcome to Phobiax. My name is Gary, and I'm going to respond to Matt Walsh and his video in relation to his video, What is a Woman? Now, Matt Walsh and I have different viewpoints on this. I've watched the film, I have very negative things to say about it, but in the since that Matt Walsh says that nobody will discuss things with him, no one will argue with him, okay, I'm going to do so. I'm going to address his points here. I'm responding to his response to a person who goes by the name of Professor Dave.
My movie, What is a Woman? And I'm quite interested to see that, so let's go through this together.
Everybody seems to be furious about trans people. Half of us are furious that they exist, and the other half are furious about what the other half is saying. I would like to jump in and see if I can clear up some of the ways that people are talking past each other. Now, it's no secret that I'm a bit on the liberal side, but rest assured, the left is not going to get away scot-free on this one. They're missing the mark on a few key points. But as tends to be the case, it's bigots on the right who are the main problem, so let's start there.
We're off to a rough start. Putting aside Dave's smug, know-it-all tone and demeanor, something that seems to be a matter of instinct for people like him, so I'm not going to hold it against him. The real problem is that in the very first sentence, he's already wildly and intentionally mischaracterizing his opponents. In 30 seconds, he gives us a...
Okay, but how's he mischaracterizing you? You're targeting a marginalized minority for no good reason that I can see. You want to create fear based upon nothing. You want to stoke fear based on nothing. Trans people are actually more likely to be abused than they are to be the abuser. Statistically, that is proven by facts. I can back them up, and now down below by the statistics. So, what other terms is there but bigot? If you stoke fear of somebody because of their race, religion, sexuality, or gender identity, you're a bigot. It'd be the same as if you were in the 1940s and they were Japanese Americans. And you would say the same things like, why we put up with these Japanese Americans doing this, that, and the other. It's just stating the fact that you're picking on a marginalised minority for no good reason that I can see. But saying that though, he shouldn't start off with the gate because that is an ad harm and that's an attack on you. I don't think you're a bigot. I think you're misinformed. There you go. But it is bigoted to pick on a marginalised minority. Continue.
straw man and an ad hominem. He's doing that in the first 30 seconds. He's beginning this way, which signals that he doesn't have much to offer beyond this point. Because if he actually planned on making a compelling argument, he wouldn't come out of the gate breezily dismissing millions of people as bigots. Sorry, not millions, billions. Because anybody who has a problem with basic concepts of gender ideology is a bigot, he says, which means that almost everybody in the world and who has ever existed in the world is a bigot.
Oh dear. Right, the thing is that transgenderism isn't just a new thing or a new fad, Matt. It's existed since ancient Greece. It's existed for millennia. We have recorded history of it. So, despite the claims you're going to make in this video, which are erroneous, and I can back that up with evidence, which will be down below, the thing is that it's not a new thing. So, billion people haven't not accepted this in the past. People have accepted that people can be different genders and change genders. And this is not just in Europe, this is all over the world, despite the claims to the contrary that it's just a Western construct.
Professor Dave begins the proceedings with that declaration. He also lies about the nature of the opposing argument, and he does it in the laziest and frankly dumbest way imaginable. He says that the people on the other side are furious that trans people exist. Now, in reality, as he's well aware, we're not furious that trans people exist, but rather we deny the underlying premise of gender ideology. If we're furious about anything, it's that this ideology is being imposed on society, and especially on children, and it's causing great harm in the process.
Okay, what harm is it causing to promote the fact that transgenderism is something that affects a wide array of people who some of them realize it as their teenagers. You see, the thing is that 1% of people is quite a lot of people. I mean, we've got what 68 billion people on this planet. You calculate what 1% of that is.
By saying that we're furious that trans people exist, he gets to dismiss all of us as a bunch of angry, spittle-flecked rage clowns.
No. People can hold views that in decades they come to realize were erroneous. People in the 1960s came to know that their views were wrong. Their racist views were wrong by argumentation given by people on the civil rights movement. People who were attacking gay people come to the rights because of the Stonewall and the gay rights marches. We had to publicly apologise for months of that. So, people could change their mind on something. Just because people got things wrong doesn't make it right now. And your argument here kind of doesn't make any sense because, again, people can get things wrong, and it's okay if it's based upon a bigoted thing that nobody really cares about. Continue.
When he is also quite well aware that when it comes to this subject, nearly all of the angry, spittle-flecked rage clowns are on the other side of the discussion.
Right. But you just said, what about ad homs? Isn't that an ad hom? You just said that they're on the other side. Wasn't that a ad hom? Because you're trying to paint one side as being wrong. I thought you were about having a conversation, Matt. I thought you were about trying to be rational about reasonable. Once in the doctor that you're about the truth, you're about what's factual. Well, if the facts don't match your argument, shouldn't you want to know? Continue.
Take, for example, the people threatening to kill me and accusing me of genocide for making a documentary.
Okay. I don't think people should threaten to kill you. Nor do I think people should get rid of film. If people don't watch it, there's a big X in the right hand corner of your box. Just click that. I watched your film, and there's problems with it that I'll get into, but again, genocide. I think what you did was harmful because you're harming people who are trans, who are legitimately, trying to find their voice and their identity. And you're making that job harder, not more easier to do that.
Where I am only visibly angry one time briefly when addressing a school board that covered up the rape of a student, so perhaps you'll excuse my emotions in that case. But the other point of this mischaracterization is to pretend that we're angry at trans people personally rather than critical of the claims made by trans activists. Overall, it's a mess, and we're only 30 seconds in. Let's continue.
The primary issue is people who deny transgenderism. These are the people who spew the tired Fox News talking points. Liberals say there are 89 genders and anyone can identify as a hamster, that sort of thing. It's a deliberate caricature of reality peddled by all the angry conservative dudes popping up in my feed lately who claim that nobody can define a woman. Let's all take a moment to acknowledge the problems that go along with the ambiguity of language. Sex and gender are different words that refer to different things. If you did not know that, now you do.
So we have another common rhetorical tactic from the left, and honestly, I'm quite disappointed to hear common rhetorical tactics when I was promised an utter destruction of my worldview, and I was looking forward to it. Professor Dave says it's a tired Fox News talking point that there are a lot of genders. But that's not Fox's talking point, that's his talking point. This is indeed the official position of the...
No, he's talking about that people say that you can identify as a horse, a penguin, a chair, something else, but people, like somebody pointed out that you can't, again, that isn't a gender identity. There are three identities, which is man, woman, non-binary. There's three. That's all we claim. There is no other claim apart from that. That is what we claim. There's nobody pretending to be a hamster. There's nobody pretending a horse or a chair or a table or whatever. A wolf that you said, again, you don't know what a furry is, so I think you should stop there.
The gender ideologue. They may disagree on how many genders, but they all agree that there are a lot more than 2. Some say there are infinite numbers. Facebook says there are 58. If this sounds insane, that's not Fox's fault. As for sex and gender being 2 different things, I totally agree. Sex refers to biology, while gender is a linguistic term that refers to words, but was co-opted by a pedophile sexologist named John Money and applied to people.
Oh, damn. Right, so you're saying that John Money co-opted this. Do you have proof of this? I mean, I've looked up John Money stuff and he's not as influential as you claim he is. Especially in the film. Again, gender is something that we use in society and have used in society since the 1900s and the 1800s, so we'd be able to get some senses. Now again, where's the factual evidence that backs up your claim? To you.
In a vague and ambiguous way. Dave never mentions that point. He doesn't seem to know where his own ideas came from, or else he doesn't want you to know.
Okay. No, it's just that you don't want people to know that you're full of shit. That's what you want people to know about. Because you see, because we actually have history of where transgenderism comes from, and it doesn't come from John Money. It comes a lot earlier than that. It comes from ancient Greece. We've got ancient Greece, we've got Victorian times. We have a lot of history of transgenderism being taken. Now the thing is, it was recognised by people who worked with John Money, but not by John Money himself. Actually, people were very critical of the things he did, and he's not as influential as you claim in the film. Continue.
Ignorant or deceptive, you decide.
No, you're being deceptive, because you're claiming that John Money is responsible for this. He isn't. It was actually part of the Stonewall riots that happened in the 1950s, which again John Money had no influence over. Transgender individuals then, or transgender as a term didn't come over until later, but they were still individuals who were still intersex, were either changing from male to female, or females living as males. Now the thing is, we can now do the surgery, and I think that's what bothers people. But the thing is, they've existed for years, and there's people who've been living as there are men who are living as women, and we're living as men. But now we can do that surgery. Continue.
From here, Professor Dave provides a basically correct definition of sex with a long digression into intersexuality, and then gets around to talking about gender. Let's listen to that.
Are you coming down the pub? Colin's asked me to find a bubble for the spirit level.
Gender is a different phenomenon. It is still biological, but it is a neurochemical construct. This means that ultimately it is still genetic in basis, but it absolutely is not determined merely by the sex chromosomes. It is tremendously more complicated, and researchers are still working to understand the biological basis of gender identity. Human psychology is complex. People need to deal with that. Thoughts and feelings are ultimately chemical phenomena. We all have a neurochemical profile that guides how we think and feel, and part of that is gender identity. The reason that we are just now becoming equipped to differentiate between the two phenomena is that in the vast majority of humans, somewhere between 99 and 99.9% of all people, gender identity aligns with biological sex.
So gender identity has a neurochemical basis because it's a feeling, and feelings can be traced.
No, it's not a feeling. Again, this shows you that Matt Walsh has zero understanding what neurochemistry is. Zero. It's not a feeling, it's more intrinsic to that. It's how you see yourself, it's a perception. It's nothing to do with feelings, it's deeper than that. It's your subconscious, Matt. It has nothing to do with feelings. But continue.
Traced back to brain activity. Okay, sure. I'll buy that. The question is whether those feelings reflect reality. That's the question. An anorexic person feels that she's overweight.
Oh damn. You can't compare the two. And I'll explain why in a moment. Okay. Anorexia, well, can have since a people's predisposition to get it is not something that's innate from birth. The predisposition to get it is innate from birth, but you're not always destined to get it if you have a predisposition. It's something that you get later in life based upon social pressures, based upon family pressures, based upon wanting to look a certain way, the perception of yourself. Again, there's a lot of things that come with growing up. Sometimes it could be bullying at school, sometimes it could be a lot of factors. One doesn't get the same thing with trans people. Nobody bullies you into being trans. Nobody is saying that you are trans. It is something that is innate from birth. And those feelings are something that we can test, resolve, and study, and they're not the same things as being anorexic. Anorexia is a eating disorder. Being trans is not a disorder of any kind. It is a natural part of 1%, as Professor Dave was talking about, brain chemistry.
The feeling is a biological phenomenon in the sense that it's happening in her brain.
No, it's not a biological phenomenon. The predisposition is a biological phenomenon. The actual it being triggered is a psychological phenomenon. There's a difference between them.
Brain in the same sense that a man feels like a woman, but we understand in her case that the feelings are disordered, incorrect, wrong, delusional, and so we work to treat her brain, her...
No.
feelings to more accurately align them with reality. We don't say that the anorexic is trans obese, and we...
No, but we do say that it's part of a natural brain activity, and it's based upon social pressures. That's the reason we treat it. Trans people are part of a natural society, of a natural brain function for 1% of people.
We don't call actually obese people cis obese. We understand that there's physical reality and then feelings, and sometimes feelings are out of step with reality. And when that's the case, we usually understand that the feelings are the issue, they are the problem to be solved, and so we try to solve them. Will Professor Dave address that objection in this video? Spoiler, no, he won't. In fact, he won't honestly engage with literally any objection raised by the opponents of his ideology at all. Won't even try.
All right, will you address the objections I raised about the fact that you lied about it being coming from John Money?
Common theme with these people, but let's keep listening in.
The unfortunate linguistic coincidence is that we use terms like man and woman, or male and female, in describing both of these phenomena. That is where the confusion arises, when people insist that one term must encapsulate both phenomena at once. So when someone asks, what is a woman, expecting to get a very simple answer that children can understand, they are sorely mistaken. The answer requires a discussion of genetics and neurochemistry.
Well, I'm sorry you find it offensive, Dave, but yes, I do deny the concept of gender as it was conceived by John Money. You accept that concept as gospel. You're offended that anybody disagrees with it. That's your problem. Meanwhile, you say that the definition of the word woman is complicated, but please note that it's complicated is not a definition.
Okay, do you want to give you a definition of what a woman is? Okay, a woman is somebody who tries to be feminine. There you go. But however they want to do that, whether that's either buy dresses or dress a certain way or act a certain way or both. Sometimes it's the way that they want to wear their hair, sometimes it could be body alteration. Again, it's the perception of the self that you want to see feminine. Even tomboys are feminine in a certain way. Even they dress masculine, they still embrace part of femininity. That's what being a woman is. It is somebody who tries to become more feminine. to be more female. There you go. That's what a woman is.
So you still haven't defined it. I never insisted on a simple definition. I simply insist on a definition, any kind of definition, some sort of meaning. You can give me a complicated one. That's fine. Go ahead, try me. Give me a complicated definition. I'm perfectly fine with that. But you must have some definition, whereas you provide none at all. See, this is a major problem for you, Dave, and let me try to explain why. It's a problem because, and listen closely, you are using the word. Do you see why that's an issue? You say the word woman is complicated and apparently ambiguous and hard to understand, yet you use it. You refer to women. You talk about women. I bet you'd even say that you believe in women's rights. Would you say that? I bet you would.
Hold on. Women's rights is trans women's rights as well, because they're included.
This must mean that you have some solid, comprehensible idea of what a woman is, yet you never explain that idea. That's a very big problem for you, Dave. You're using a word that you cannot or will not define, which means either that you're hopelessly confused and we should dismiss you and your arguments for that reason, or you're evasive and disingenuous and we should dismiss you and your arguments for that reason. Either way, you and your arguments are in really bad shape right now. Let's continue.
Oh yeah, this guy completes his videos with adverts, doesn't he? I like this.
The acceptance for suppressed sexual orientations came first because around temporal progression matter how uncomfortable it makes conservative people.
Wait, what? Nearly every binary is a spectrum? Like what? No, I'm not uncomfortable with that. I just think it's nonsense. I mean, in a certain way, I'm uncomfortable around people saying stupid things, but that's all we mean by that. What are the binaries that turned out to be spectrums? Don't say gender, because that's begging the question. I don't agree with John Money's concept of gender at all. It's not that I think gender is a binary. It's that I think it's a totally useless and incoherent concept that should be put back into the world of linguistics and grammar where it belongs. As for sex, if that's not a binary, then what is it? There are males and females. There are those who are of the nature to become pregnant and those who are of the nature to impregnate. There's no third sex. It's a binary. So,
you know, there are tons of females who can't get pregnant, right? I don't have the medical persuasion to become pregnant. Are they not females then? Are they not women? Because you just took away a lot of cisgender women by that comment. Do you realise that? There are loads of women out there who cannot get pregnant. There are a lot of men out there who can't get somebody pregnant because their equipment aren't working. And it doesn't matter how much flaming, Viagra or whatever else they're taking, their equipment just doesn't function that way, or their soldiers, when they squirt out, aren't exactly landing where they're supposed to.
where is the spectrum that everyone thought was a binary? Can you give one example? As for the claim that 10% of people are gay, where did you come up with that? Where'd you get that from?
Statistics.
Well, I'll tell you where you got it from. You got that from Alf.
No. He didn't get it from Alpha Kinsey. He got it from. What's I looking from? I'm just doing a Google search. Percentage of people who are gay worldwide. So this is from UCLA. How many people are transgender? Right, so where were you? So that's 3.5% of adults in the US are gay, blah, blah, blah. Same-sex behaviour, so that's just in the United States. Worldwide, here we go. %. But that doesn't include bi people, that doesn't include people who are pansexual, so that number is probably closer to 10% than it is to 5%.
Alfred Kinsey, who made that claim in his book Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, which is the same book that contains a chart documenting the orgasms of infants.
No, it's to do with the fact that he he's probably using the LBGT number, not just gay people. He should have said the LBGT number.
He arrives at his arguments and his figures about human sexuality by interviewing sex offenders and prison inmates and lying and pretending that he surveyed a cross-section of the population, but he didn't. So that's where you're getting your information, Professor. Just thought you might like to know that. Let's watch a little bit more.
Now, as promised, with the indictment of conservatives complete, I turn to liberals and the missteps they are enacting that are preventing. Society can't turn you trans any more than it can turn you gay. Gender is determined biologically.
His indictment of conservatives was complete without ever approaching the vicinity of any one of our actual arguments, and then he turns to criticize liberals to prove how fair and objective he is by slamming them for not being liberal enough. He also says that society can't turn you trans, totally ignoring the fact that in our society currently, and only in our society, only in the West, there has been a many-fold increase in trans identification. If that's not society turning people trans, what is it, Dave?
It's more increase in people feeling free to come out as trans.
Now, I don't know what you'd say to that because, as always, and like literally every other gender ideologue I've ever spoken to, and I guarantee I've spoken personally to many more people on your side than you've spoken to on my side, but like all of them, you don't attempt to grapple with any of the logical inconsistencies of your position. But I ask again anyway, if society can't turn you trans, why are we experiencing an unprecedented skyrocketing rise in trans identifications?
Because people are much more free now to come out as trans. It's much more accepted in society, that's why.
If you say that there have always been this many trans people, but they were all in the closet, you'll then have to explain why there was never, ever, at any point, ever, a mass epidemic of people committing suicide because they were not affirmed in their gender identity.
Right. That's a logical fallacy. Just because there wasn't a lot of suicide.
After all, a staple...
Wait. You missed a step there. Where does trans mean you're going to commit suicide? There's a gap there. There are people living as trans back in the ancient Greek times, in Victorian times. Before that, a lot of them didn't commit suicide. Explain those to me. Again, you won't be able to because you'd either have to lie or ignore it. You'll know this point, you'll just cut it out because you won't be able to address it. You won't be able to look at the numbers and say, okay, I was wrong about that. Now the thing is, what does suicide have to do with that? If there's low suicide numbers, that says that again, people now are much more in touch with being trans and want to be celebrated for being that, and it much more touches their personal persona than it did before. They had to live a lie and just live as the other sex without telling anybody, and now they can be free to acknowledge the truth that they were once the other gender and now they are living as the gender they were always meant to be. Smoke on that.
Well, doctrine on the left is that lack of affirmation is dangerous because it causes suicide. Well, then...
Yeah, that's stupid. People have been living as trans for years. The thing is that people are much more in touch with them now, and it touches them more because now they get to understand it more of it's part of their identity. That's why it's an issue.
Why was that never happening back when there were millions and millions of supposed unaffirmed trans people? Indeed, why is the suicide epidemic happening now when trans people are so affirmed? Here's my answer. Gender ideology is a modern Western social construct that didn't exist until it was invented by psychoanalytical quacks and then parroted
Actually, no. It's existed for millennia. It's in Africa, in Europe, in Oceania, in Asia, in a lot of other countries. And you're going to some tribe in Africa to prove that it happens in a lot of other countries. It has a lot of tribes. Just because it didn't have the one university, you could have gone to Algeria. It happens there. It happens in other tribes in Africa. I'll list the ones it happens to below. Just for your own Matt.
mindlessly by people like you. Further, while pretending that it affirms and nurtures people, it actually leads them into self-destruction and despair. The evidence bears that out. The evidence is entirely on my side, in fact, and not at all on your side, because on this topic you are wrong about nearly everything, and your underlying claims are so nonsensical and incoherent that you can't begin to explain them or defend them, and that's why you don't even try. Which is a long way of saying, Professor Dave, that you are today canceled.
Because he won't address a single point I just made, he'll just ignore the ones that I just made. Anyway, that was a lot of fun, ladies and gents. He'll see that I didn't address any of his points, yada yada yada. He'll fail to admit that I actually pointed out that he's factually incorrect about a lot of claims he made. A lot which I'll leave commented down below. I hope you found this edifying. This is